Krishna. I'll begin with a chant, and the page that we're on is 294. It's the beginning of a chapter, chapter 14, called The Instruction to Vaishnavas and Brahmos. But I'll first start with the chant. Om Hridaya Kamala Madhye Rachitam Nirvikalpam Sada Sadakila Beda Tikameka Swarupam Prakriti Vikriti Shunyam Nityamanandamurtim Bimala Paramahamsam Ramakrishnam Bhajamaha Nirupamanati Sukshmam Nishprapancham Nirhiham Gagana Sadrisham Isham Sarvabhuta Divasam Triguna Rahita Satchit Brahmarupam Paranyam Vimala Paramahamsam Ramakrishnam Bhajamaha Vitaritum avatirnam jnana bhakti prashanti Pranaya galita chittam jiva dukkha sahishnum Drita sahaja samadhim chinmayam komalangam Vimala paramahamsam Ramakrishnam bhajamaha. This is the meditation on Sri Ramakrishna. This knower of Brahman, ever established in his own nature, full of wisdom, self-possessed and self-lighted, eternal, the very image of that Brahman who is pure bliss, shining ceaselessly in the lotus of the heart, one alone and without parts, pure and still. This Ramakrishna, Paramatman Supreme, we adore. Subtle, fine, and luminous, not even the shadow of the gross can ever reach him, for his purity is without parallel. Untouched by Maya's webs of deceit, beyond the dark river of time and desire, vast as the sky, this Supreme Lord, Ramakrishna, we adore. The very essence of Brahman as existence, light, this Ramakrishna, Paramatman Supreme, we adore. Saturated with divine consciousness, his home is in all. He hears every cry. He knows every pain. Under the weight of its compassion, his heart can deny the need of none. Born to raise the world with teachings of knowledge, love, and peace. Born to bring mankind fresh songs of joy. This certain refuge of all, this Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the Paramatman Supreme, we adore. So I'm doing this because Swami Sarvadevananda is out of town, and he asked me to take this class for him. So beginning this chapter, it's Sunday, September 23rd, 1883. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting in his room at Dakshineswar with Rakal, M, and other devotees. Hazra sat on the porch outside. The master was conversing with the devotees. Master to a devotee, Narendra doesn't like even you nowadays. To M, why didn't he come to see me at Adar's house? How versatile Narendra is. He's gifted in singing, in playing on an instrument, and in studies. He is independent, and he doesn't care about anyone. The other day he was returning to Calcutta with Captain in his carriage, and Captain begged Narendra to sit beside him, but he took the seat opposite. He didn't even look at Captain. What can a man achieve through mere scholarship? What is needed is prayer and spiritual discipline. Gauri of Indesh was both a scholar and a devotee. He was a worshiper of the Divine Mother. Now and then he would get overpowered with spiritual fervor. When he chanted a hymn to the Mother, the pundits would seem like earthworms beside him. I, too, would be overcome with ecstasy. At first, he was a bigoted worshiper of Shakti. He used to pick up tulsi leaves with a couple of sticks so as not to touch them with his fingers. So the tulsi is used to worship Krishna, and he was so bigoted that he didn't want to touch those leaves. Then he went home, and when he came back, he didn't behave that way anymore. He gave remarkable interpretations of the Hindu mythology. He would say that the 10 heads of Ravana represented the 10 organs. Kumbhakarna was the symbol of tamas, Ravana of rajas, and Vibhishana of sattva. That is why Vibhishana obtained favor with Rama. After the master's midday meal, while he was resting, Ram, Tarak, and some other devotees arrived from Calcutta. Now I was going to read you a little section about Tarak, because I've been doing little pieces about Ramakrishna's interaction with different devotees at the beginning. So this is about Swami Shivananda, who was Tarak, and I just wanted to lead up to it that he's going to be present during this next reading. At midnight, I saw that the master was in ecstasy and pacing naked in his room. He was also muttering something. Shortly, he came to the veranda and asked me, "Hello, are you sleeping?" "No, sir," I replied. "Could you chant a little of the Lord Rama's name?" After I chanted Rama's name for some time, he calmed down. Thus I passed that night with joyful intoxication. In the morning, while I was taking leave, bowing down to the master, he said, "Come again, alone." During my second or third visit, I was serving him when suddenly, he touched my chest while in an ecstatic mood. That touch made me lose outer consciousness and sent me into a deep meditative state. I do not know how long I remained in that state. As a result, everything became revealed to me. I realized that I was the Atman, eternal and free. I realized that the Master was the Lord, born a man for the good of humanity, and that I was on earth to serve him. He gave me a similar blessing another day under the banyan tree in the Panchavati. On one occasion, Tarak requested the Master to give him the experience of Samadhi. The Master told him, "You will get it. Don't be impatient. The Divine Mother will bless you at the right time." Another day, the Master took Tarak to the Panchavati and wrote a mantra on his tongue, which put him into deep meditation, and he lost consciousness of his body. Later, the Master brought him back to normal consciousness by rubbing his chest with his fingers. This is a kind of tantric initiation in which the Guru imparts spiritual power to his disciple. Swami Sardananda wrote in Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master, that the Master's touch aroused an upsurge of longing for God in Tarak's mind, and suddenly all the knots of his heart were loosened. So this is some of his early experiences with Tarak, who became Swami Shivananda. Nitya Gopal, Tarak, and several others were staying with Ram, a householder disciple of the Master. Nitya Gopal was always in an exalted spiritual mood. Tarak's mind, too, was always indrawn. He seldom exchanged words with others. Ram looked after their physical needs. Rakal now and then spent a few days at Adar's house. Ram to the master, "We have been taking lessons on the drum." Master to Ram, "Nitya Gopal too?" Ram, "No, sir, he plays a little." Master, "And Tarak?" Ram, "He knows a good deal." Master, "Then he won't keep his eyes on the ground so much. If the mind is much directed to something else, it doesn't dwell deeply on God." Ram, "I have been studying the drum only to accompany the kirtan." Master to M, "I hear that you too are taking singing lessons. Is that so?" M, "No, sir, I just open my mouth now and then." Master, "Have you practiced that song, 'O Mother, make me mad with thy love'? If you have, please sing it. The song expresses my ideal perfectly." The conversation turned to Tarak's hatred for certain people, which Sri Ramakrishna did not like. Master to the devotees, "I used frequently to visit a certain house at Kamarpukur. The boys of the family were of my age. The other day they came here and spent 2 or 3 days with me. Their mother, like Hasra, used to hate people. Then something happened to her foot and gangrene set in. On account of the foul smell, no one could enter her room. I told this incident to Hasra and asked him not to hate anyone." So he's implying that if you hate people, it's going to come back to you in one form or another, So we shouldn't hate people. That's one of the things. Toward evening, as Sri Ramakrishna was standing in the northwest corner of the courtyard, he went into Samadhi. In those days, the master remained almost always in an ecstatic state. He would lose consciousness of the world at the slightest suggestion from outside. But for his scant conversation with visiting devotees, he remained in the indrawn mood and was unable to perform his daily worship and devotions. Coming down, this is 1883, I'm just pointing out to you, it's 3 years before Sri Ramakrishna's death. Coming down to the relative world, he began to talk to the Divine Mother, still standing where he was. "O Mother," he said, "worship has left me, and japa also. Please see, Mother, that I do not become an inert thing. Let my attitude toward God be that of the servant toward the Master, O Mother. Let me talk about Thee and chant Thy holy name. I want to sing Thy glories. Give me a little strength of body, that I may move about, that I may go places where Thy devotees live and sing Thy name." In the morning, Sri Ramakrishna had been in the Kali temple to offer flowers at the Mother's feet. Continuing, the Master said, "O Mother, I offered flowers at thy feet this morning. I thought, that is good. My mind is again going to formal worship. Then why do I feel like this now? Why art thou turning me into some sort of inert thing?" The moon had not yet risen. It was a dark night. The Master was still in an abstracted mood. He sat on the small couch in his room and continued his talk with the Divine Mother. He said, "Why this special discipline of the Gayatri? Why this jumping from the roof to this roof to that? Who told him to do it? Perhaps he's doing it of his own accord. Well, will he practice a little bit of that discipline?" The previous day, Sri Ramakrishna had discouraged Ishan about Vedic worship, saying that it was not suitable for the Kali Yuga. He had asked Ishan to worship God as the Divine Mother. The Master said to M, "Are these all my fancies, or are they real?" M remained silent with wonder at the Master's intimate relationship with the Divine Mother. He thought, she must be within us as well as without. Indeed, she must be very near to us, or why should the Master speak to her in a whisper? Wednesday, September 26, 1883. There were very few devotees with the Master, for most of them came on Sundays. Rakhal and Latu were living with him the greater part of the time. M arrived in the afternoon and found the Master seated on a small couch. The conversation turned to Narendra. Master to M, "Have you seen Narendra lately?" With a smile, he said, "Of me. He still goes to the Kali temple, but he will not when he truly understands. His people are very dissatisfied with him because he comes here now and then. The other day he came here in a hired carriage and Surendra paid for it. Narendra's aunt almost had a row with Surendra about it." The Master left the couch and went to the northeast veranda where Hasra, Kishori, Rakhal, and a few other devotees were seated. Master to M, "How is it that you are all here today? Have you no school?" M, "Our school closed today at 1:30. Master, why so early? M, Vidyasagar visited the school. He owns the school, so the boys get a half holiday whenever he comes. Master, why doesn't Vidyasagar keep his word? If one holds on to the truth and looks on woman as his mother, does not realize God, then Tulsi is a liar." That's a quotation from a song of Tulsi Das, who was a great sage and a poet. If man holds on to truth, he will certainly realize God. The other day, Vidyasagar said he would come here and visit me, but he hasn't kept his word. So here he emphasizes the importance of truthfulness. He says in other places it's the austerity of the age, and that was the one virtue, as it were, well, one of them, that he really stressed was truthfulness. And he even got angry at Rakhal one time when he was joking, and he said something that was untruth as part of the joke. You know, everybody knew it was part of the joke. And we often do that, but he said even that is not good because you're not speaking the truth, and you should speak the truth. And there's the saying that if you speak the truth for 12 years, then everything that you say will come true. If you can be devoted to truth, it has a power in it. And that happens with some, very advanced holy men or women. There's a big difference between a scholar and a holy man. The mind of a mere scholar is fixed on woman and gold, but the sadhu's mind is on the lotus feet of Hari. A scholar says one thing and does another, but it's quite a different matter with a sadhu. The words and actions of a man who's given his mind to the lotus feet of God are altogether different. In Benares, I saw a young sannyasi who belonged to the sect of Nanak. He was the same age as you. He used to refer to me as the loving monk. His sect had a monastery in Benares. I was invited there one day, and I found that the mohant was like a housewife. I asked him, "What is the way?" For the Kali Yuga, he said, the path of devotion as enjoined by Narada. He was reading a book. When the reading was over, he recited, Vishnu is in water. Vishnu is in land. Vishnu is on the mountain top. The whole world is pervaded by Vishnu. At the end he said, peace, peace, abiding peace. One day he was reading the Gita. He was so strict about his monastic rules that he would not read a holy book looking at a worldly man. So he turned his face toward me and his back to Mathur, who was also present. It was this holy man who told me of Narada's path of devotion, as suited to the people of the Kali Yuga. Yeah, that would be sort of hard if he turned his back on you. Anyway, he knew what everybody was thinking and where they were spiritually. So, Master. Oh, excuse me, M. Are not sadhus of his class followers of the Vedanta? Master. Yes, they are. But they also accept the path of devotion. The fact is that in the Kali Yuga, one cannot wholly follow the path laid down by the Vedas. Once a man said to me that he would perform the Purascharna of the Gayatri, and I said, why don't you do that according to the Tantra? In the Kali Yuga, the discipline of Tantra is very efficacious. So this Purascharna is when you chant your mantra, or in this case, he was, I think, doing the Gayatri, a certain number of times, and then you increase it up to a far point, and then come back down. Swami Prabhupada used to have people do that practice sometimes. It's interesting. I was once reading a book by Virajananda, and he said he was doing his mantra 100,000 times, and I was trying to figure out, and Holy Mother also, how you could do it that many times. I mean, in a day, but the thing is that it becomes, if you do it a lot, it becomes like flowing. It kind of connects, so it becomes much quicker. But I don't know how you'd possibly count anything like that either, because when you start going, you just, there's no point in really counting, if you're really doing it. Anyway, I don't know how they keep track of all these things, but I guess people can do it. It is extremely difficult to perform the rites enjoined in the Vedas. Further, at the present time, people lead lives of slaves. And there's a footnote to this. He perhaps was referring to the foreign rule in India. It is said that those who serve others for 12 years or so become slaves. They acquire the traits of those they serve. While serving their masters, they acquire the rajas, the tamas, the spirit of violence and love of luxury, and the other traits of their masters. Not only do they serve their masters, but they also enjoy a pension after their terms of service are over. Once a Vedantic monk came here. He used to dance at the sight of a cloud. He would go into ecstasy of joy over a rainstorm. He would get very angry if anyone went near him when he meditated. One day I came to him while he was meditating, and that made him very cross. He discriminated constantly. Brahman alone is real, and the world illusory. Since the appearance of diversity is due to Maya, he walked about with a prism from a chandelier in his hand. One sees different colors through the prism, and in reality there's no such thing as color. Likewise, nothing exists in reality except Brahman. But there is the appearance of the manifold because of Maya, egoism. He would not look at an object more than once, lest he should be deluded by Maya and attachment. He would discriminate while taking his bath at the sight of birds flying in the sky. He knew grammar. He stayed here for 3 days. One day he heard the sound of a flute near the embankment and said that a man who had realized Brahman would go into Samadhi at such a sound. In another place, I think it's in the Gospel, he talks about a man who lived in a cave up in the Himalayas, and he'd come out and he'd go into ecstasy when he saw a waterfall. And that's all he'd do. During the day, he'd come out, he'd do this, and he'd go back in his cave. And, but he'd go, when he saw this, what a waterfall looked like and sounded like, and the beauty of the whole thing. Well, talking about the monk, the master showed his devotees the manners and movements of a Paramahamsa, the gait of a child, face beaming with laughter, eyes swimming in joy, and body completely naked. Then he again took his seat on the small couch and poured out his soul-enthralling words. So that really would have been a sight. I try to imagine that's something you can meditate on, is how he would portray this, what a Paramahamsa looked like, and the way he walked. Here, let me read it again. The gait of a child, face beaming with laughter, eyes swimming in joy, and body completely naked. Because one of the fetters, he'll mention the fetters again later, is shame. So you're just unaware of his body, totally. Master to M. I learned the Vedanta from Nagta. That was the naked saint. That's what Nagta means. Brahman alone is real. The world is illusory. The magician performs his magic. He produces a mango tree, which even bears mangoes. But this is all a sleight of hand. The magician alone is real. M. It seems that the whole of life is a long sleep. This much I understand, that we are not seeing things rightly. We perceive the world with a mind which cannot comprehend even the nature of the sky. So how can our perceptions be correct? This reminds me of a line from one of the Grateful Dead songs. Wake me, shake me, don't let me sleep too long. And we feel that way, right? That it's a dream, it's just, Master. There's another way of looking at it. We do not see the sky rightly. It looks as if the sky were touching the ground at the horizon. How can a man see correctly? His mind is delirious, like the mind of a typhoid patient. The Master sang in his sweet voice. What a delirious fever is it that I suffer from, O Mother. Thy grace is my only cure. Continuing, the Master said, truly it is a state of delirium. Just see how worldly men quarrel amongst themselves. No one knows what they quarrel about. Oh, how they quarrel. May such and such a thing befall you. How much shouting, how much abuse. M. I said to Kishori, the box is empty, there's nothing inside, but 2 men pulling at it from either side thinking the box contains money. Well, the box alone is the cause of all this mischief, isn't it? The Jnani sees all this and says to himself, what a relief if one feels when this pillowcase of the body drops off. The Master and M went toward the Kali temple. Master, why should you say such things? This world may be a work of illusion, but it is also said that it is a mansion of mirth. Let the body remain. One can also turn this world into a mansion of mirth. M. But where is there unbroken bliss in this world? Yes, the Master said. Where is it? Sri Ramakrishna stood in front of the shrine of Kali, prostrated himself before the Divine Mother. M followed him. Then the Master sat on the lower floor in front of the shrine room, facing the blissful image, and leaned against a pillar of the Natma deer. That's just right across from the Kali temple. There's a structure that's fairly large, actually, where people sit and meditate sometimes. Then the Master sat on the lower floor in front of the shrine room, facing the blissful image, and leaned against a pillar of the Natma deer. He wore a red-bordered cloth, part of which was on his shoulder and back. M sat by his side. M: since there is no unbroken happiness in the world, why should one assume a body at all? I know that the body is meant to reap the results of past action, but who knows what sort of action it is performing now? The unfortunate part is that we are being crushed. So this is the feeling that as long as you're doing karma, you're building more karma. So this is why it's very important, some of the practices of offering everything to God, and you're trying not to build any more, because you've already got plenty that you're working on. They say that the karma that's in this, that you're doing right now, is it's like a bow and arrow, and the arrow that has left the bow is that karma, what we're reaping in this life. It's called prarabdha karma. And then there's one that's in the bow, and you haven't let loose of it yet. You can control that one. That's what you would be building up in this birth. And then there's some that are in a quiver, and those are sanchita. Those are like in your samskars and things, and they're going to come later. But they say that a holy man can burn this and help you with this one. The one that's going, they say you can't stop. But Holy Mother says, and others do too, that if you do discipline, spiritual discipline, you can lessen the effect. Where if you might have lost your hand, you may only get a cut, So they say that even though you're going to reap something from that arrow that left the bow, it will be reduced. And you can get rid of the other two. The grace of a holy man gets rid of the one that you can't do. But they say that you can also, there are meditations that you can do to bring things to your conscious mind, and then you can deal with them. Because there's a lot of things that are hidden that we don't know about even. From other births, or even this one, you may have pushed things back and not recall them. But if you meditate correctly, it'll come up, and you can deal with it then by offering it, to God and trying to do the opposite, things. There's ways of dealing with these things. But first you have to be aware of them, because if they're just hiding out in the quiver, it's not so easy.
Where do you find those meditations to bring things to your consciousness?
Where do you find how to do those meditations? You asked your guru. And there are also things that are like Meditation in Spiritual Life. That book by Yatishwarananda is very good. It has many things in there. If you read that, they're books that tell you many different practices that help to get rid of, negative impressions that we all have. Since there's no unbroken happiness in the world, why should we assume a body at all? I know that the body is meant only to reap the results of past action, but who knows what sort of action it is performing now? The unfortunate part is that we're being crushed. Master, if a pea falls into filth, it grows into a pea plant nonetheless. But there are the 8 fetters. 8 bonds. Master, they are not 8 bonds, but 8 fetters. What if they are? These fetters fall off in a moment by the grace of God. Do you know what it's like? Suppose a room has been kept dark thousands of years, but the moment a man brings a light into it, the darkness vanishes, not little by little. Haven't you seen the magician's feet? He takes a string with many knots, ties one into something, keeping the other in his hand. Then he shakes the string once or twice, and immediately all the knots come undone. But another man cannot untie the knots, however hard he may try. The knots of ignorance come undone in a twinkling of an eye through the Guru's grace. So here again, he's talking about the fetters, the 8 fetters, which are, do you know what they are? Can anybody? Any hatred is one. And so that was why he objected to these people who hate other people. Shame is one. Yes, in a way. Lineage, pride of lineage, so who your parents were, that kind of thing. And pride of good conduct. So if you're living a good life, you know, like you might start thinking, I'm better than other people. Then fear and secretiveness, caste and grief. Those are what are listed as the 8 fetters. And he does talk about them in several different places. And as I said, there are places where you can read. Well, you know, he cleaned the latrines with his hair, so that obviously was one of his, because he was a Brahmin. So that is absolutely not no. And they practice the opposite things, you know, often in order to overcome these things. But secretiveness that's an interesting one. If you're one of these people that keeps things hidden inside and doesn't like to tell people. I know some people who are like that, and it's sort of like knowledge is power. And if they know something, they're not going to share it with you, you know.
But what about meditating in the mosquito net so no one knows that you're practicing?
Well, but that isn't, I don't think, being really secretive in the sense that he's talking about. He's talking about knowing things and not sharing it and things like that, hiding things. But I think, yeah, in spiritual practice, sometimes you don't want to show it. I mean, you don't have to go around all, you know, like with your beads out and doing this thing, you know, so that everybody knows how holy you are.
Like Azra outside.
Yeah.
Gold and with beads.
Yeah. So the master just said, so they can come undone with the twinkling of an eye through the Guru's grace. Well, can you tell me why Keshav Sen has changed so much lately? He used to come here very often. He learned here how to bow low before others, how to bow low before a holy man. One day I told him that one should not salute a holy man as he had been doing. Harish says rightly, all the checks must be approved here. Only then will they be cashed in a bank. Everybody laughs. So that was one thing that, there's one incident, I don't remember who it was with, but somebody saluted him, you know, like this. And so then he went even lower, you know, and finally he's doing a whole, you know, pranam, you know, and that's how he taught to salute people. M listened to these words breathlessly, and he began to realize Satchidananda, in the form of the Guru, passes the check. Master, do not reason. Who can ever know God? I've heard it from Nagta once for all. This whole universe is only a fragment of Brahman. Hazra is given to too much calculation. He says, this much of God has become the universe, and this much is the balance. My head aches as he calculates. I know that I know nothing. Sometimes I think of God as good, and sometimes as bad. What can I know of him? It's true, sir. Can anyone ever know God? Each thinks, with his little bit of intelligence, that he has understood all of God. As you say, an ant went to a sugar hill, and finding that one grain of sugar filled its stomach, thought that the next time it would take the entire hill into its hole. Master, who can ever know God? I don't even try. I only call on him as Mother. Let Mother do whatsoever she likes. I shall know her if it is her will. I shall be happy to remain ignorant if she wills otherwise. My nature is that of the kitten. It only cries mew, mew. The rest it leaves to its mother. The mother cat puts the kitten sometimes in the kitchen and sometimes under the master's bed. The young child wants only his mother. He doesn't know how wealthy his mother is, and he doesn't even want to know. He knows only, I have a mother. Why should I worry? Even the child of a maidservant knows he has a mother. If he quarrels with the son of the master, he says, I shall tell my mother, I have a mother. My attitude, too, is that of a child. The other attitude they talk about sometimes is the monkey attitude. He holds on to the mother, but he can fall, whereas the mother cat picks it up by the back of the neck and moves it around. Suddenly, Sri Ramakrishna caught M's attention and said, touching his own chest, well, there must be something here, isn't that so? M looked wonderingly at the master. He said to himself, does the mother herself dwell in the master's heart? Is it the Divine Mother who has assumed this human body for the welfare of humanity? Sri Ramakrishna was praying to the Divine Mother, O Mother, O embodiment of Om. Mother, how many things people say about thee, but I don't understand any of them. I don't know anything. Mother, I have taken refuge at thy feet. I have sought protection in thee, O Mother. I pray only that I may have pure love for thy lotus feet, love that seeks no return. And Mother, do not delude me with thy world-bewitching Maya. I seek protection. I have taken refuge in thee. We say part of this prayer in the morning on some mornings. One thing that Sri Ramakrishna say, here is loss, here is gain, here is pleasure, here is pain, take them both. But he said he could not say, here is truthfulness and here is untruthfulness. So again, he stresses the value of truth. The evening worship in the temple was over. Sri Ramakrishna was again seated in his room with M. M had been visiting the Master for the past 2 years and had received his grace and blessings. He'd been told that God was both with form and without form, that he assumed forms for the sake of his devotee. To the worshiper of the formless God, the Master said, hold to your conviction, but remember that all is possible with God. He has form, and again, he is formless. And he can be many things more. Master to M, you have accepted an ideal, that of God without form. Isn't that so? M, yes, sir, but I believe what you say, that all is possible with God. It is quite possible for God to have forms. Master, good. Remember further that as consciousness, he pervades the entire universe of living and non-living. M. I think of him as the consciousness in conscious beings. Master, stick to that ideal now. There is no need of tearing down and changing one's attitude. You will gradually come to realize that the consciousness in conscious beings is the consciousness of God. He alone is consciousness. Let me ask you one thing. Do you feel attracted to money and treasure? M. No, sir. But I think of earning money in order to be free from anxiety, to be able to think of God without worry. Master. Oh, that's perfectly natural. M. Is it greed? I don't think so. Master, you are right. Otherwise, who will look after your children? What will become of them if you don't feel that you are the doer? M. I've heard that one cannot attain knowledge as one has the consciousness of duty. Duty is like the scorching sun. This is one thing that Swami Vivekananda used to say. Master, keep your present attitude. It will be different when the consciousness of duty drops away of itself. They remained silent for a few minutes. M. To enter the world after attaining partial knowledge, why, it is like dying in full consciousness, as in cholera. Master, Ram. The idea in M's mind was that just as cholera patient feels excruciating pain at the time of death because of retaining consciousness, so also a jnani with partial knowledge must feel extremely miserable leading the life in the world, which he knows to be illusory. M. People who are completely ignorant are like typhoid patients who remain unconscious at the time of death and so don't feel the pain. Master, tell me, what does one attain through money? Jaya Gopal Sen was such a wealthy man, but he complains that his children don't obey him. M. Is poverty the only painful thing in the world? There are the 6 passions besides, and then there's grief and disease. Master, also name and fame, the desire to win people's recognition. Well, what do you think my attitude is? M. It's like that of a man just awakened from sleep. He becomes aware of himself. You are always united with God. Master, do you ever dream of me? M. Yes, sir, many times. Master, how? Did you dream of me as giving you instruction? M. remained silent. Master, if you ever see me instructing you, then know that it is Satchidananda himself that does so. M. related his dream experiences to Sri Ramakrishna, who listened to them attentively. Master to M. That is very good. Don't reason any more. You are a follower of Shakti. Wednesday, October 10th, 1883. You notice that he doesn't give his dream experiences here. We're all asked not to talk about any experiences that you have that are really spiritual experiences. And some dreams really are a spiritual thing, and they're very different. If you've had a dream like that, you can recognize the difference between that and a regular dream. And he tells people that if you talk too much about things like that, they lose their power. If you just remember them and savor them and go back to them, then they increase. in you. Wednesday, October 10th, 1883. Adar had invited the Master to come to his house on the occasion of the Durga Puja festival. It was the third day of the worship of the Divine Mother. When Sri Ramakrishna arrived at Adar's house, he found Adar's friends, Sarada, Balaram's father, and Adar's neighbors and relatives waiting for him. The Master went into the worship hall to see the evening worship. When it was over, he remained standing there in an abstracted mood and sang in praise of the Divine Mother. Out of my deep affliction, rescue me, O Redeemer. Terrified by the threats of the King of Death am I. Left to myself, I shall perish soon. O save me. Save me now, I pray. Mother of all the worlds, thou the support of mankind, thou the bewitcher of all, the mother of all that has life. Vrindavan's charming Radha art thou, dearest playmate of Braja's beloved, blissful comrade of Krishna, wellspring of Krishna's Leela, child of Himalaya, bless the best of the gopis, beloved of Govinda, sacred Ganga, giver of moksha, Shakti, the universe sings thy praise. Thou art the spouse of Shiva, the ever-blessed, the all. Sometimes thou takest the form, sometimes thou art absolute, eternal beloved of Mahadeva, who can fashion thy infinite glories. The Master went into Adar's drawing room on the second floor and took a seat, surrounded by the guests. Still in a mood of divine fervor, he said, "Gentlemen, I have eaten. Now go and enjoy the feast." Was the Master hinting that the Divine Mother had partaken of Adar's offering? Did he identify himself with the Divine Mother and therefore say, "I have eaten"? Then, addressing the Divine Mother, he continued, "Shall I eat, O Mother, or will you eat? O Mother, the very embodiment of the wine of divine bliss." Did the Master look on himself as one with the Divine Mother? Had the Mother incarnated herself as the Son to instruct mankind in the ways of God? Was this why the Master said, "Have I eaten"? In that state of divine ecstasy, Sri Ramakrishna saw the 6 centers in his body and the Divine Mother dwelling in them. He sang a song to that effect. Again he sang, "My mind is overwhelmed with wonder, pondering the Mother's mystery. Her very name removes the fear of Kala, death himself. Beneath her feet lies Mahakala. Why should her hue be Kala, black? Many the forms of black, but she appears astoundingly black. When contemplated in the heart, she lights the lotus that blossoms there. Her form is black, and she is named Kali, the Black One. Blacker than black is she. Beholding her, man is bewitched forevermore. No other form can he enjoy. In wonderment asked Ram Prasad, where dwells this woman so amazing? At her mere name, his mind becomes absorbed in her, though he has never yet beheld her. The fear of the devotee flies away if they but seek shelter at the feet of the Divine Mother. Was that why the Master sang the following song? I have surrendered my soul at the fearless feet of the Mother. I am afraid of death no more. Unto the tuft of hair on my head is tied the almighty mantra, Mother Kali's name. My body I have sold in the marketplace of the world, and with it have bought Sri Durga's name. Deep within my heart, I have planted the name of Kali, the wish-fulfilling tree, tree of heaven. When Yama, king of death, appears, to him I shall open my heart and show it growing there. I have cast out from me my 6 unflagging foes. Ready am I to sail life's sea, crying to Durga, victory. I think I'm going to stop there. It's a little early, but. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is he still the same. Om peace, peace, peace be unto us all.